My name is Larry Jordan, and welcome to this webinar on making problems disappear with Boris Continuum complete. What I want to talk about today is to showcase 10 filters and transitions that can help fix problem footage, running Boris Continuum Complete version 7, running inside Final Cut Pro 7. Specifically, I want to focus on the following effects: BCC wire removal, which shows automatic motion tracking; smooth tone, swish pan, which is a transition; film effects, dissolve glow, which is also a transition; lens blur and lens transition; Chroma key studio and motion key, which is very close to magic, and this one I'll show using manual motion tracking, and we'll wrap up with a three-way color grade showing automatic motion tracking. Motion tracking is built into many of the filters inside Boris Continuum Complete. So with that as a preamble, let's get started. I'm inside Final Cut Pro 7, and this is a fashion commercial that we're running. And if I run from the very beginning, hit the space bar and play this through, we have our star talking, except right there we've got a little bit of a skin blemish. Now, if this is a horror film, I wouldn't particularly care, but we're talking fashion, and it would be really nice if we could make that itty-bitty little blemish disappear. But the problem is there's no painting tools inside Final Cut. So there we'll harness the power of Boris. Watch this instead. We have her talking, and when she turns her head, look at that. It's gone. We made a problem disappear. How do we do it? Well, I took the exact same footage. Here it is. And I've put a razor blade cut, letter B to select the razor blade, and I just cut right here because I want to apply a filter to this portion of a clip and not this portion of a clip. So I select the portion I want to apply the filter to, and I go up to the Effects menu, which is where all effects inside Final Cut are located, and go to Video Filters. Inside Video Filters, we'll go to BCC 7 Keys Matte, and we'll select Wire Remover. Now, this is not necessarily the most intuitive choice because it doesn't look like we're removing a wire, but this is the filter that we want to use in this case. Double-click the clip to load it into the viewer, and go to the Filters tab. What wire removal allows me to do is to remove a portion of the image by blending other elements around. And the portion that we're going to be adjusting is highlighted by this red stripe. Now, the red stripe is turned on by going to the View pop-up. Render shows us the finished result. The Preview area shows us the area that we're going to be changing. And so the first thing that I want to be able to do is to select where that area is. I want to put this red stripe directly over the little dot on her nose. So I click on the crosshair, because that's how you change positions, for endpoint number 1. That controls this part of the line. And I'm going to click where I want the red line to start. Then click the crosshair for endpoint number 2, click hold, and I'm going to drag it so the red line, which is what we're going to be removing, preview of it at least, is right across where I want to do the patch. We'll increase the width slightly to make it so we can cover it, and then we'll feather this just a bit, soften the edges. I could soften it a lot or soften it a little. I'll leave a little bit of feathering. We'll make the final adjustment when we're done. So this says that's the area that I want to remove, or at least hide. But she turns her head, and the camera is tilting, and how are we going to do this? Because I don't really want to spend the time keyframing every single frame here. Well, we're going to take advantage of a feature that's built into this called the motion tracker. And we're going to track on the fly, which means that it will automatically generate motion tracking as we go through the clip. So I'll move my playhead to the very beginning of the clip, hit the up arrow key to position it there, and 2 motion trackers show up. There's motion tracker number 1 and motion tracker number 2. We need to get these positioned, and to do that I'm going to scroll farther down here, and you see there's 2 twirl downs. The first twirl down is for motion tracker number 1. The tracker keyframe, that's the tracker center keyframe. I click the plus key. The plus key allows me to position a motion tracker. Now, the way you decide how to position a motion tracker is you look for something that's got an area of high contrast. I wouldn't position it in the middle of her cheek. There's nothing that the tracker can lock onto. You want to position it on something that's in the frame the whole time. And there's a really nice high contrast area, which is this part of her nose. So I'm going to just simply click right here and put the motion tracker right on that part of her nose. And we'll select tracker number 2 by scrolling farther down and select Motion Tracker 2, select the keyframe, and put tracker number 2 right about here. Now we've applied the motion tracker. The way that we get the motion tracker to work is we go up to the Mark menu, and under Mark we go to Play. We need to force Final Cut to play every frame. And when it does, it creates a motion track as she moves her head and tilts down, and that green bar indicates the status of the track. So I've now motion tracked this shot. And because I locked onto 2 high contrast points, I've got a really nice track going on here. Press the up arrow key to go back to the beginning of the clip. So now I've got my motion track done. How do I tie the motion track into this preview area? And to do that, we apply it under the motion tracker. We apply it, the first track to endpoint 1, and the second track gets applied to endpoint 2. So each motion tracker is applied to that little red line that we put on. The red line indicates the area that we're covering, and the left-hand side of the line, which is point 1, gets tracked to motion track point 1, and the right side of the line gets tracked to motion tracker 2. So now let's go back to switch out of the track on the fly, because we're done, except the line moved. Why? Because it perfectly aligns itself with the motion trackers. Well, the motion tracker is not the base of her nose. We need to dial in an offset. The offset allows me to position where that motion, this preview area, gets set in relationship to the motion tracker. So let's just pull this up a bit. And I'm on track number 1. We'll pull that to there. Pull that up over a little bit. Sometimes it's easier if I just put it in the middle of the clip. There we go. And then we go down to motion tracker number 2, dial in an offset. You want to try to keep this area as small as possible, because then it's easier to hide the patch because you're affecting less of the image. And we'll just dial this down just a little bit and move it down just a hair. And again, we'll make it a little bit wider. Good. Now we have 3 things we could do. We could just cover it. We could mask it, which just simply puts a black mask on top, or we could clone the area. You could take a look at each one of these. The one that looks the best for me is cover, but let's switch out of preview and let's switch it to render. And by switching to cover, notice that you can't see it anymore. Hit the down arrow key to move to the beginning of the clip. I'm going to use the arrow keys rather than play it in real time. And notice that as she turns, that little skin blemish is totally gone. The cool part about this is that because the motion tracker is built into the filter, it makes it really easy to make this change occur. So let's just think about the workflow. First, we set the preview area, that's the red line, by clicking on the view. We set that to preview area. We then defined the area that we wanted to have the change occur, the masking occur, the wire removal occur. We then turned on the motion trackers, and there are 2 motion trackers to make sure that we're accurately tracking both panning, tilting, and zooming. And we motion tracked. Once that was complete, we offset the motion trackers so that the offset would then move that preview area to cover the skin blemish. And we then changed it from preview, which shows the red bar, into render, which shows the finished result. Isn't that cool? Let's try another one. Same girl, same effect. This is just such a neat pan. It's a nice swish pan. I love these. It's sort of a really nice combination between a dissolve and a wipe. Wipes tend to get in your face and break the storyline, but a swish pan to me is a nice compromise between the soft, gentle transition of a dissolve and the pay attention, this is kind of significant, of a wipe. So just because we can and because the girl was here, let's apply the swish pan. And there's a couple of interesting things that I want to show you. As with all things, you select the edit point inside Final Cut, go up to the effects menu, go down to video transitions, and we're going to go to BCC wipe transitions and apply a swish pan. it automatically defaults to the default length of 1 second. Double-click the icon to load it into the viewer. By the way, never double-click in the center of any transition. It opens up the trim edit window, and you wonder why you're suddenly on a different planet. Instead, you always want to double-click just off-center, because that way it opens up inside the viewer. The cool thing about the swish pan is I can change the direction. By default, the swish pan goes from right to left. But if I change this pan direction, I can go from left to right, which surprisingly is a jarring transition. If we watch this, she's looking to the right and the pan goes the other way, and then he's looking, for some reason, it's wonderful that the filter provides this, but it's a dramatically different feel to that transition because it goes against the direction you're looking. You really want to confuse people? Let's go top to bottom. Piece of cake. By the way, the reason I'm able to play this without having to render it is my absolute #1 favorite keyboard shortcut. Of all keyboard shortcuts that exist, this is my favorite. It's called Option P. Option P allows me to play something without having to render it first. Another thing we can do, I'm going to have this go from left to right, is I can add some separation. What that does is when you Option P, not only do a swish pan, but see that black area right in the center? I can adjust how much separation there is between these two clips. I can have them touch, or I can make it look like we've got some pause, some time in there. Very cool stuff. Option P. And we're done. All right, let's take a look at something different. This is Dr. Vint Cerf. I had the wonderful honor of interviewing him a few years ago when he was giving a speech at a high school in Van Nuys, and he literally can be credited with inventing the internet, and it was one of the most wonderful hours I've ever spent. And he has very graciously given me permission to use some of his footage from that interview for my training, and I'm grateful to him for allowing me to make that happen. He is a little bit on the older side of young, and we're starting to see some wrinkles come in here. Let us pretend that we want to soften his skin just a little bit. Well, if we look at play, this is the original camera footage, shot standard def. Now I've applied some smoothing just to soften that, take out some of the texture in the skin to make it glow a little bit and make it a little less old. So how do we do this? Well, we do it with another filter inside BCC, and it's called the Smooth Tone filter. Select the clip, and always when you're doing effects, always put your playhead in the middle of the clip that you're working with, because that way you can watch in the canvas while you're making changes in the viewer. Go up to the effects menu, go down to video filters, go down to, where am I going to go with this one? I'm going to go to color and blurs, and we're going to go down to smooth tone. Right there. Double click the clip to load it up into the viewer. Go to the filters tab. And one of the challenges that I have is trying to figure out exactly how much smoothing to dial in. Well, another feature that's built into every one of the filters inside BCC is this compare option. When you twirl down the compare option and you set the compare to side by side, I can see a before picture on the left and an after picture on the right, which allows me to see exactly how much I'm dialing in and compare it to the original. Plus, for those of you that like to tweak, if we grab this wipe side button, I can change the offset of both these pictures so I can properly see exactly what I want to see, and then I can adjust the right offset by dragging so they're both framed the way I want. So now I don't have to guess at what my setting is going to look like. I can tweak it right now. Now, there's several ways that we can apply a smooth tone filter: fast rendering, faster rendering, or smoother. For me, the only option is smoother. And the reason is it gives me really nice control over exactly how much smoothing I dial in. Because what this filter does is it's not just blurring the entire image. I mean, if that's all we wanted to do, we'd apply a blur filter. What this allows us to do is to blur skin tones without blurring other portions of the image. For instance, I want to keep the texture in the suit and the texture in the tie and the sharp edges of the shirt. Why? Because it's not locking to those colors. It's locking on the colors of the face. The way we adjust the blur is by adjusting radius. Now let me just grab the radius and drag it way up. Notice how the skin has gotten very soft, very plasticky, very artificial and unpleasant looking. So by adjusting the radius, we can dial in exactly the amount of smoothing that we want to get the effect that we want. And all I want to do is I want to take a little bit of the edge off. I want to smooth out the skin and make it look just a little bit softer. And I do that by adjusting the radius. You can continue to refine this with blur, cutoff, and maximum deviation. And while I'm sure that their programmer friends love them desperately, the control that they give me is really insignificant compared to what we've got with the radius number, radius percentage. And when you're done, and when we're ready to output, just switch the compare mode off. Boom, instant image, all well better again. Option P, and we play it. And we just soften that skin tone just a bit. Now, this is one of those things where sometimes you want to do it, sometimes you don't. With Boris, you've got the option. Let's take a look at something different. Here, I've got a beach scene. It was a long time ago on a beach far, far away. My memory remembers what that beach was like and the activities that went on with the beach, and it brings back memories of childhood. This is a very evocative image. And anyway, I wanted to sort of share that memory with you and share the person that's thinking about that memory and reflecting on those times long past as she looks over the beach. Okay, cool. I like that. A very evocative piece, except what I'm working with is much more in-your-face colorful. How do I change the look of this piece of video? Well, I could open up the three-way color corrector and tweak happily, but sometimes it's more subtle than that. Sometimes it's more sophisticated. Well, we've got a very neat filter here I want to show you. I'm going to select both clips, the beach clip and the girl clip. With both clips selected, I'm going up to the effects menu. I'm going down to video filters. I'm going to BCS effects, and I'm going to add a film effect. As with all things, double-click it to load it up into the viewer. Go to the Filters tab. I could start to change all this stuff, but frankly, my brain can't wrap around it. I want to go to the preset browser. And notice the preset browser, all I have to do to apply a look is double-click it. I've got a black and white look. Or I've got a color push look. Whoa. Beach on drugs. Or I've got a dreamlike or a warm tone. And I can experiment with this without having to understand the underpinnings of the settings necessary to get this look. Or a misty kind of vignette feeling. I think I'll go with a bleach bypass. It takes out some of the saturation, makes it a little bit more contrasty, and gives me that evocative memory feeling. And if I go over to here and put my playhead here, and I want to show you something. I'm going to leave my playhead in the wrong clip, double-click the girl clip and load it in, go to the preset browser, and all of my looks are gone. Well, the reason the looks aren't here is because the playhead is not in the clip you double-clicked. As soon as you put your playhead in a clip, all the looks are back. Okay, I confess it terrified me the first time it happened because I had no idea. I thought my life was over. But you just simply, as always, you put your playhead in a clip you want to correct, and that way you're able to monitor the clip not only in the canvas, but you can see it in the viewer as well. And let's find a nice bleach bypass look for the girl. Double-click it to apply the effect, close the effect. Now, I did something else. We start with this Option P to Option P to play it, and we've got this soft, misty beach in the background in our memories of our mind kind of thing. And we go from the beach to the girl, and then the girl, I do a dissolve into a color push, and we bring her right back into reality. Isn't it neat? The whole point is that just by taking the same shot and messing with the colors, we can take us from the past to the future, or the past to the present. I'm going to select this edit point, go up to the effects menu, go down to video transitions, and I want to add, I want to add a BCS dissolve glow. Now this is a sort of a glow transition. Watch how this changes the mood. Option P, blows out, and there she is. And a straight dissolve to the color push. Really cool. I like that. Another one. One of my favorite transitions when I'm directing live television is I want to be able to take the camera and have one camera lose focus as the other camera comes into focus, and I do this wonderful lens transition dissolve thingy. Watch this. Out of focus, into focus, the hand reaches in, out of focus, and we're in. Isn't that cool? Watch that. Well, that's the result, but what I've got to work with is one straight shot of the hanging ladles and one straight shot of the red stuff going into the pan. You can tell cooking is not my first favorite thing to do. So how do I add all this stuff? How do I add a blur focus to a clip, and how do I animate that blur focus? And then how can I do a transition? Well, without my hands leaving my wrists, let's start and show you how. It goes from there, reach in, and across. And this is our source footage. Perfect. All right, select the clip we want to apply the filter to, go up to the Effects menu, go down to Video Filters, and let's go to BC7 Colors and Blurs, and let's go to a Lens Blur. Double-click the clip to load it up into the viewer. By the way, you see this deep color render option here? You have a couple of choices. You can always do deep color rendering, which is like, it's going to give you richer colors, it's going to give you greater quality, but it takes longer to render. Or only when you're working with YUV material, or only when you're working with 32-bit material. One of the things that you can do is switch this to only when rendering 32-bit material, and what that does is if you're not in a 32-bit mode, if you're working with 8-bit video, which is a lot of the low-end HD formats, it will speed your rendering. But you're always going to get better quality if you leave deep color rendering on. So I set it to always. I've got the horsepower here to take advantage of it, and the difference in render time for the speed gear that I've got is not that big a deal. Okay, when it comes to the lens blur, again, we've got a couple choices: fast, normal, sharp, and sharper. I'll switch this to normal, just because it gives me a chance to show you that the setting is there. The amount of the blur is changed or adjusted by the iris scale. If you want no blur, set the iris scale all the way over to 0. If you want lots and lots and lots of blur, set the iris scale up and the whole image just totally disappears. Most of the time, you're going to apply a little bit of blur, not a lot. Okay, that's iris scale controls the blur. So let's blur this a bit, a little bit more. There we go, and hit the up arrow key so we go to the beginning of the shot. Now, for those of you that are really, really observant, notice that the speculars have a 6-sided shape. Now, that's caused by what's called bokeh, B-O-K-E-H. And bokeh, at least that's how it's pronounced according to Wikipedia, what that is that's the way the lens renders out-of-focus points of light. It's the way it deals with speculars. And depending upon the kind of lens that you've got and the way the lens is manufactured, that bokeh has a variety of different shapes. And we can control the shapes. And let me illustrate why it's important. If I turn this lens thing off, notice my out-of-focus stuff in the background are all circles. Yet when I turn this on, all of my foreground shapes are 6-sided. I want to change the shape of the iris, and to do that, I'm going to click on iris shape and change it from 6-sided. I could make it 3-sided. They become triangles. I could make it 12-sided, or I could make them circles. I'm going to make it a circle. And the benefit now is that my artificially created lens blur now blends more smoothly with the lens blur that's created automatically by the lens and the depth of field of the lens and the camera. So you can change that. Additionally, we can play, and there's that bokeh. It's a Japanese word, B-O-K-E-H, pronounced as Wikipedia tells me, B-O-K-E. So you can adjust this. And the way we adjust it is I can bring it down just a bit, and notice that my circles start to hollow out. It gives me a little bit more of a lens flare feeling. And I can adjust the shading and fill in or sharpen or blur out the edges. So in this case, I'm going to just give myself a little bit of texture here by messing with the bokeh and the bokeh shading. Now, the world will not end if you leave them at their default setting. But it's nice to know you can play if you want to. So now we need to animate this. I'm going to set a keyframe for scale, and we'll start this just a little bit bigger. We'll start probably around 50. And I've set a marker for where I want that effect to end. So Shift M, which takes me to the marker, and we'll click another keyframe and set the iris scale to 0. And now we're in focus. Again, Option P starts out of focus. You see it slowly rolling into focus. The benefit to this is if you really, really, really need an out-of-focus shot, Gaussian blur will blur the image, but it doesn't give the illusion of a lens depth of field, roll the focus, rack focus kind of shot. This does. What this allows us to do is to create the illusion of racking focus with a lens, as opposed to simply blurring everything in the image. Well, let's take this one step farther. Let's select the edit point. Let's go up to Effects. Let's go to Video Transitions. And this time under Video Transitions, let's go to the Wipe Transition, and let's go to a Lens Transition. And we'll put our playhead in the middle of this transition, double-click it, again, never in the center, always offside. And I've now created the illusion of a out-of-focus transition on both the outgoing shot and the incoming shot, as though the cameras were blurring when I did this, but they weren't because they had no idea where I was going to edit. The cool thing about this transition is we have the exact same iris scaling, same thing we did before. We can adjust how far out of focus it goes. We have the exact same control over our iris shape. I'm going to set this to circle. Now, iris shape will only affect essentially speculars, highlights and whites. If you don't have a point source of light, then the iris shape is not going to be meaningful. If it's all shades of gray, it doesn't work. So you really need to have speculars to have that function properly. But here's what I really like about this. You can say, just apply the defocus to the outgoing image, at which point the chef is in focus, but the hanging ladles are not. Or just apply it to the incoming image. The ladles are in focus, but the chef is not. Or apply it to both images. They both lose focus. I'll just Option P that transition. With both going in and out of focus, it loses focus on the ladles. It's out of focus on the background. They transition between with a straight dissolve, and then the new chef shot slowly rolls into focus. Whoa. But are you sitting down? It gets even better. If I go up to here where it says Animation Tuning and twirl down Animation Tuning, I can add an ease curve. Click it. This shows that I've got a straight linear transition between the first shot and the second. But if I grab the ease in, I can say, let's just ease this in. So it starts slowly, and then it ramps quickly, and then it eases out, and it glides in for a landing. So on a transition, I now have Bezier control points that allow me to create ease in and ease out on the transition. Oh, this is amazing, because it's as though we've got much more of an organic manual feel. Option P. And now quickly ramps over and eases into the final. Great. And here we go. Very cool stuff. Let's try something different. This is a chroma key shot, and this is a chroma key nightmare. We've got clean skin edging here, and we've got big hair with lots of strands of hair going on. And we've got a very colorful background, and I want to make sure that she looks like she's a part of that colorful background. So how do we do it? Well, there's our source image, and this is from iStock Photo. I select the clip. When you're doing chroma key work, the background is always on V1, the foreground is always on V2, and you always apply the filters to the V2 clip. So I select the V2 clip, go up to the Effects menu, go down to Video Filters, and go down to Keying. Now, the reason I want to go to the keying category and select the Chroma Key Studio is that the Chroma Key Studio has 3 filters all in one. It has a Chroma Key filter, it has a light wrap filter, and it has a matte choker filter. And sometimes you want to use 1 or 2 or all 3 of those. So I'll select the filter, double-click the clip to load it up into the viewer, go to the viewer, and first thing that I want to do is I want to enable the chroma key, so I turn this on. I want to look first, before I do the chroma key though, is you always want to sample your background to make sure that you've accurately captured the color green that you're working with. Well, I'm fortunate, and this clip was professionally lit. I've got a really smooth, very clean green background. So you select where it says backing color, you click the eyedropper tool. This becomes the sampling tool that you use to sample the background. You want to sample as close to her face and hair as you can, but you never want to sample so close that you run the risk of actually clicking on the hair. So I sample about a 1/4 inch off, because what we're really interested in is that transition between where the foreground is and the background. So you want to get the green that's as close to that transition as possible without running the risk of sampling the wrong thing. Okay, we now have a rough key. The way we adjust this is we switch the composite to a matte. On the Macintosh, inside Final Cut, the foreground should always be solid white, and the background needs to be solid black. Our goal is to adjust so there's no shades of gray, because a shade of gray is going to cause a murky key. So I grab the matte density. This controls my foreground. And you see how she's starting to develop shades of gray. You adjust the matte density until the foreground is solid white, and you want to find that point, that one instant where it goes solid white. You want to be just at the edge between just a little bit of gray and solid white, because if you go too far, you start to lose hair to tail, and you start to get all kinds of fringing coming in, and it looks ugly. So the goal is to find the point where the foreground goes solid white and there's no shades of gray. For me, it's on this shot, and it's different for every shot. So there's no sense writing down numbers. Every shot is different, but the process is the same. Then you adjust matte lightness until the background, notice how it's gone to gray. You want to find the point where the background goes solid gray. Now look at the strands of hair right around in here. Look at the strands of hair. The higher I pull the lightness, the more those fine strands of hair go away, until finally you've lost all that fine hair detail. So the reason that we're being cautious here is that I want to find the point where the background goes solid black, but I maintain the greatest amount of edge detail, that her hair here. Then we switch out of this and go back to composite. And we've got a nice clean key, Option P, to play it. The problem is that I've got a little bit of brittleness here, and I've got a little bit of the hair is just causing me a little bit of grief. So we're going to take advantage of another feature that exists inside. I've got a little bit of green coming in here, so I'm just watching that and tweaking the green just a hair until it gets the look that I want. Now, the way that I fix that brittleness is we take advantage of another feature inside this Chroma Key Studio called Light Wrap. What Light Wrap does is it takes the color of the background and wraps it around the edges of the key. In order for that to work, we have to tell it what the background shot is. So I click Enable Light Wrap over here, and this graphic image well is where I take my background video, which I've stored in a clips folder, and find the concert lights, there it is, and drag the video into that folder. And look what happened when I did. I clear it, and look at how I've got all this weird edging. I drop it in, and that cleans up the edges around the hair. You can pump the lightness just a bit and pump the softness just a bit. It's even better if you look at it in isolation. If I say light wrap on black, look at how the colors from the background are wrapped around her edges so that you can see exactly how I'm using the background colors to make her part, organically part, the foreground image part of the background. Now another option that we've got, I'll go back to composite again. Another option that we've got is to turn on matte choker. When matte choker is turned on, I want you to watch this hair right along in here and notice the stair-stepping along her skin. Matte choker gives me the ability to fix one, but at the risk of losing something else. When matte choker is turned on, look at how smooth her skin gets. All that stair-stepping has disappeared. But at the same time, all that loose, big hair feel has gone away. What it's doing is it's choking in a pixel or two around the edges of the key. Does a nice job at smoothing skin. Now, if her hair was not all flying away, if it was in a pigtail or a baseball cap, then I'd turn matte choker on in a minute. But here I have to decide, do I like the loose bounciness of the fringy hair, or do I want to have the skin be smoother? Either of those choices could be right, depending upon what you're doing. Option P, this is with matte choker turned on. Clearly looks good. All the flyaway hair is gone. The skin is very smooth. We've got really nice looking keys. Or I turn matte choker off. The big hair is back. I see more of the individual strands. And as long as you're focused on her face and her eyes, got a little bit of tearing on her teeth. I would probably go back and make a couple of adjustments with her smiling and make sure that I haven't lost the key. And that's just simply solved by going down to the Chroma key setting and adjusting matte density until you pick up the foreground again. So I want to just make sure, yep, I've got a little bit of gray there. So we'll just tighten that up. There we go. Go back to composite, and that takes care of that problem. Option P to play. Cool. The power that light wrap provides is it integrates the foreground with the background. And the power that matte choker provides is it cleans up edges. And sometimes you want to use it, and sometimes you don't, and now you know what to look for. Well, let's take a look at something else. Oh, this one is amazing. I was watching some surfing footage the other day, and here's our mad surfer cruising along, and I play the clip, and whoa, 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 whoa. We have an unidentified flying object going across there. What the heck is it? Why, it's the flying fickle finger of fate flying across the screen, causing... Oh, it's a seagull. And it goes right through our surfer. It would be really nice if I could make the seagull disappear. Well, it just so happens. Double click, turn on the filter. Poof, no seagull. Watch this, look at that. Right where the seagull was going, the seagull isn't going there anymore. This, to me, is just mind-bendingly incredible. So here's how it works. We'll play it. There's our seagull. What I did is with the razor blade, I cut the clip, the frame before the seagull appears, and I cut the clip, the frame after the seagull disappears. The reason this is important is I want to apply the filter just to the portion of the clip the seagull is in. Select the clip, go up to the effects menu, go down to video filters, go down to BCC keys, and we're going to select, what are we going to select? We're going to select motion key. Motion key. Okay, so I'm going to set my playhead. No, I'm going to put it in the middle here. Double click the clip to load it up into the viewer. And I've created a subclip. The reason a subclip is necessary is because of this. Notice that it says source layer. What the motion key does is it takes pixels from a different frame and puts those pixels from a different frame into the current frame, thereby hiding the seagull. But it needs to know what frame and what video it can take them from, and that's what the source layer is from. This is an important point. The reason it's so important is that you can't simply set an in and an out on a clip and drop a clip with an in and an out in the source layer, because anytime you drop a clip into a graphics well, it doesn't recognize the in and the out. It has to be a subclip. So I've created a subclip, I think so. There it is, seagull subclip. Double click it. I've created a subclip which is exactly the same frame. That's our seagull flying through. But I created it by loading the seagull footage. Let's just type the letter F here. do a match frame. There's my total seagull clip. There's the short 10 frame shot that I have that has the seagull. I set an in, I set an out. I went to the modify menu. I made a subclip. A subclip does not duplicate footage. It just creates a new clip that acts like it's a real clip that was captured from real videotape, but all it's really doing is it's pointing into the master file that's stored on your hard disk. Make subclip. You set an in, you set an out on a clip, you go to the modify menu, and you make subclip. It then creates this image of a torn frame here because it's sort of torn from a larger clip. And then I named it Seagull Subclip version 1. You can name it Fred as far as I'm concerned, but you got to name it something. So I called it Seagull Subclip number 1. Double click this clip, load it into the viewer, click the Filters tab, grab my subclip, and drag it right into that source layer. This is one of the real benefits of subclips, because this is true not only of Boris, but all the different filters that have a video feed or an image well that goes into that little icon there. It needs to be a complete clip. It always starts at the beginning of the video, which is why it has to be a subclip, not a marker and not an in. We use this in 3D video as well. All right, there's the seagull. And next step, the white circle represents the area that we want to fix. So we need to put the white circle on top of the seagull so we can get rid of the seagull. So to do that, I'm going to set a keyframe, click the crosshair, and set that right on top of the seagull. And you'll notice that it's too small. So I'm going to set another keyframe and increase the area scale until it includes the seagull and tweak the position. Now there is a motion tracker built into this effect, but the seagull is so blurry and the waves and everything else, the automatic motion tracker doesn't work. So I'm going to do this manually. I'm going to use the arrow key, move left, click a new position for this, include the seagull, and notice at Final Cut, once you have one keyframe set, it automatically sets the next keyframe as soon as you move it. So I'm just going to move this off frame. So it's going to start there, go there, go there. And now, for the next minute and a half, you're going to watch me keyframe this. I was planning on singing during this part of the demonstration, but during rehearsal, I was actively encouraged that this is a really, really bad idea. So imagine that we're just singing as we're going through here. Think Luciano Pavarotti, who can't carry a tune, and you got it pretty well right. Click here. Do, do, do. Notice that I'm making sure to include all of the seagull. Let's just set a keyframe here and pull this down in size just a bit. I'm not obsessing about where the seagull is in the circle, but I am making sure that all of the seagull is in the circle. And I'm making sure that the circle is always big enough to include said seagull. Because if I have portions of the seagull extruding from the circle, sort of damages the whole effect. That would be bad. The seagull's getting smaller, so we'll just dial the smallness in here. Here we go. And all right, the pain's almost over, folks. Aren't you glad this is a 12 frame shot and not a 125 frame shot? Oh my gracious, it would cause all of us extreme agony. All right. Done. So now what we've got is we've sized this. Before we're ready to remove it, though, I want to do one more thing. I want to switch the mode from setup region to show mask. And using the arrow keys, I'm going to move across. Notice the blue area that shows up. This is an overlap, which means I'm not going to get a clean removal wherever the blue exists. So I want to look at that shot by showing the setup region and make this a little bit smaller here so that I don't have an issue with removal. I'm going to drag it down right about to there. Go back to show mask. Go to the earlier one. See if I can make that smaller. Yeah, I can just reposition it. And put the seagull down right about there. Go back to show mask. Great. That little itty bitty piece of blue I'm not going to worry about. That little blue I'm not going to worry about, and we're done. Okay, up arrow, get to the shot. Now, Setup region is how you are able to position the circle. Show mask is how you're able to see the red and the blue warning areas. Remove area is how you make the bird disappear. So this is just too cool to miss. I'm going to go to Setup region. There's the seagull. I go to Remove area. There is not the seagull. And now as I go through here with the arrow keys, there's no seagull there. That just left my jaw on the floor when I saw it for the first time. That is just, it's got to be illegal. If it isn't illegal, it should be illegal. That's just amazing. Let's do one more thing before we run out of time and they pull the plug on me. Here I've got a beautiful engagement picture of a couple in love. And as you can tell, I've done a little bit of a Pleasantville effect. Their faces are in color, and the background is in black and white. Beautiful, warm, touching. You have to look exactly at their smiling faces. You can't look anywhere else. But if I hit the home key and play this, wait a minute. This is an animated move, and it's not a still, it's video, and they're moving. How am I motion tracking a color grade to be able to create that effect? Because this is the source clip. This is what I had to work with. And this is how it ends up. Wow. Now, I could easily use the color corrector three-way filter and a vignette and a mask feather to create the same effect, but I still can't motion track it using those filters inside Final Cut. This, to me, is one of the power features that we've got inside Boris Continuum, in that we're able to add filters and motion track them. And I can color grade both inside and outside a mask area all in one filter. To do the same thing inside Final Cut would take the color corrector three-way filter, mask shape, mask feather. Would take at least 3 filters and a lot of time. So let's take a look at how this works. Here's our source clip. And I'm going to go to here. I'm going to go to where the shot stabilizes. Select the clip, put my playhead in the clip I want to add the effect to. Go down to Video Filters, Color and Blurs. There we go. Now, notice that we've got 2 three-way color grades. I've got the RT version, and I've got the non-RT version. The difference between the RT and the non-RT version is the RT version does not include motion tracking. So if you don't need to motion track, select the RT version. It just decreases the number of choices you have to make. On the other hand, we want to motion track it. So I'm going to add the BCC three-way color grade filter, and we'll motion track. Double-click the clip to load it up into the viewer, go to the Filters tab, and the very first thing that I've got is a color grade. Unlike the color corrector three-way, it's got a slightly different layout, but has the same function. Lift adjusts the blacks, the shadow detail. Gamma adjusts the mid-tone gray, and gain adjusts the highlights. These sliders control the levels of midtones, or the mid-levels of shadows, or the levels of highlights. And this is the color wheel. Similar in approach, different interface, different names. One thing that is different is this slider. This is a nudger. This allows you to make minute changes to a filter, as opposed to simply grabbing this thing and dragging frantically in all directions. So the operation similar, different names, but you're already familiar with how this works if you've seen the color corrector three-way filter. First thing I want to do is I want to create an area where I can isolate just their faces. To do that, I have to create a mask. And to do that, I take mask shape and turn it, let's see, what do I want to do? I want to create a mask shape with, it could be a rectangle, could be a rounded rectangle, could be an egg, which is way cool. Let's do egg. Way too much fun not to do egg. Twirl down mask. So in order for me to see what's going on, I'm going to change my render setting and I'm going to mask the outside pixels. That which is red will be affected outside by a second color grade, and that which is not red is affected by the inside color grade. The inside is not red and the outside is red. I can control the width of this, and it's just like a circle. Boring, boring, boring. Instead, I want to create my egg shape. I have 2 points. I'm going to click a point here and put it up near the top of the guy's head. And I'll click point number 2, and we'll put it down here amongst, right around in there, her hair. Now when I adjust the width, I can encompass both their faces. Look at that. And I can feather it because that's what we do, is we always feather everything so nobody knows the artifice that we've been working with. And this feather bias is neat. What feather bias does is it says, are you feathering on the inside of the edge or the outside of the edge? So I'm just going to adjust feather bias until I have their hair and their faces and everybody is just looking beautiful. Okay, cool. Now that I've got a mask, by definition, there's two areas in this image, that which is inside the mask and that which is outside the mask, which means when I twirl this up and go back to render with matte, I now have two color grades, that which is inside and that which is outside. And all I want to do with the outside color grade is I want to take the saturation all the way down to black and white. Ta-da! Pleasantville effect. It's a little dark and dark. Just dark. So I'm going to grab my gamma. That means mid-tone gray. Think gamma starts with a G. Gray starts with a G. Gamma controls your mid-tone gray. And we'll just pull this up a bit. Oh, we'll use the nudger just to show off that we can. And find, oh, there we go, just lighten the background so we get more of a texture. And look at how we've got that great looking Pleasantville effect already going. Neat. Let's take the outside correction, close that up. However, the problem is the mask stays put. Notice that now we got this strange color shading going on down here. Option P. Right, too ugly for words. I don't want to think about this. Look at that. That's just right, grim. So how do we fix it? We're going to turn on Motion Tracker. We saw this earlier. We're going to do it again. Twirl down Motion Tracker, and we're going to track on the fly, which means it generates the tracking points. It says move the playhead. This is the hey stupid dialogue. Hey stupid, will you pay attention? You have to start tracking from the beginning of the frame. Okay, so I move to the beginning of the frame. What do I track on? Well, you want to track on something that's high contrast and something that's in the frame the whole time. So it just so happens that we've got this really nice X caused by her hair up here and some very nice stitching in the lace on her dress. So I'm going to motion track off those two corners. Why did I pick those two? Because I experimented with a couple of others and there wasn't enough contrast. Sometimes you got to play a little bit. So I'm going to turn on tracker number 1, motion tracker. Where'd it go? Motion tracker. Twirl down tracker number 1. Click tracker 1, click the crosshair. The crosshair is how you move everything. Everything gets positioned on that. And with tracker 1, I click, hold, and drag it. So this is the real tracker, and that's sort of catching anything that slips outside that center. The default settings are fine. And we'll twirl down tracker 2. Now, I'll be honest with you. The first time I tried it, was a little shaky. It took me 2 tries and practice to get this right. So if you have to do it a couple times, once you do it, man, this is easy. But I will confess, the first time took a little bit of practice. So I set it on that fine piece of stitching. Another benefit that we have with the motion tracker inside Boris is the pre-processing function. We can help the motion tracker find this stuff. I'm going to turn on pre-processing. I'm going to crank the blacks and really crush the blacks. Now I've got this really high contrast area here and here. I'm going to crush the whites. And now I've got really strongly defined detail that the tracker can lock onto. This is not the final image. I'm going to sharpen it too. Look at this. That's enough to just suck the eyes out of your head. But we've got a clearly defined tracking point here and here. Then I turn it off. That pre-processing is solely for the motion tracker. It is used nowhere else. Once we've got that done, we've got track on the fly set. We go up to the mark menu, go down to play, every frame, and we're going to see very quickly this thin blue line appear, which shows the motion track plus about 800 insects floating around inside this image. And the green bar indicates the status of the motion track, and the red bar is where we are at this instant. We're about halfway done. Do you know if you hold your keyboard at an angle, so it doesn't sit level, if you hold your keyboard at an angle, the bits flow faster through it, and it will speed up your computer. You can try it. I explain that to my high school kids, and some of them believe me. The rest of them look at me like I'm nuts. And we're done with the track. And just as we had to dial an offset in to be able to mask the girl's skin blemish, we've got to dial an offset in here. So the way that works is I'm going to turn off track on the fly, turn on show motion path, and we've got these little dots here. Those little squares represent the start of that egg-shaped oval. I want to apply the motion track to the mask points. So there's our color mask. So we set the apply button. What does my motion track apply to? It applies to the mask points. And remember, there's two points to my mask. So I adjust the offset for tracker 1, which controls this point up here. I'm going to drag it up. I'm going to drag it up. The little square is moving up, and we're going to move it to the right, put it right above his head, right up there. And then we're going to go down to tracker number 2. We're going to drag that left to right about there and down just a bit. And now we've got that motion track laid in here and option P. Except I've got this skin right here, which looks it looks okay, but it's kind of weird. So I'm going to select and just do one more thing. I'm going to go to Effects, Video Filters, Image Control, Desaturate. Double click the clip as always, just because I'm nervous about it. Go to the filters, twirl up turn it off, twirl it up. Go to Desaturate. I'm going to hit this, which says desaturate the entire image. Plus 45. I move 45 frames ahead. I type plus 45, enter on the keypad. And over the 45 frames, I want the desaturation filter to go away. And I just simply apply that. So now it starts totally black and white, option P, and we have a slow fade in on the color so it looks much more believable. We see the face. Oops, I should turn off the motion track because those lines are just unpleasant. And we'll turn off show motion path one more time, and option P. Starts black and white. The color starts to fade up. And we see their smiling faces. Her hair starts to blow in the gentle breeze. The background is black and white. There is nowhere your eye is going to look except directly at their faces. What a great effect. A very clean motion track, a very clean color grade. It's just, that's just way cool. Way cool. The power of Boris Continuum Complete is that it allows you to solve problems and create effects that can't be solved using Final Cut Pro alone. My name is Larry Jordan. I want to thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to the folks at Boris for inviting me to present this to you today. Take care.